Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.
Francesca Hong of Madison is a Democratic candidate in the 76th Assembly District. The primary is August 11th. Francesca, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Steve, thank you so much for having me. Stoked to be here.
Well, when I look up on social media your campaign, here's what intrigues me. You say, quote, issues that arose during the pandemic are one reason why you're running. Can you give me some examples of why the pandemic has got you running for the state assembly, please?
Absolutely. So I think there are issues that actually have always been there that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. And so we're talking about vast disparities in wealth, and we're talking about racial disparities in our community in Madison. Also, the pandemic has hit my business hard. I'm a small business owner. I own a small restaurant downtown, and we're a mom and pop shop. And to have something this great really impact the lives of our employees and realize there was very little for them to rely on when something like this happened made me realize that we need to be working to fix the system.
If you're in the assembly, what would be your first bill to, quote, fix the system? I mean, to really help the people that you've just been talking about, please.
We need to expand Medicare. We need more health care. I personally am on the Affordable Care Act, and it's being threatened right now by the Trump administration. More people are going to lose their benefits as people lose jobs. And right now, health care is a priority. We are living in a pandemic.
Would you raise the minimum wage? If so, how high, Francesca?
$15 an hour.
$15 an hour. The governor has said that because of the pandemic, we may collect $2 billion with a B less in state taxes. If you're in the assembly, the choice is, it's not an easy choice. Do you cut spending or do you raise taxes or fees? Please.
You know, an economic recovery does not come from implementing strict austerity measures. I think we need to look at the fact that we are in a crisis. And a crisis is a time to reprioritize our values and how we spend. I think we need to be looking at raising taxes in conjunction with cutting spending. But that spending cannot be for programs that disproportionately harm or try to help those in our marginalized communities and our communities of color. We need to make sure that we accept all federal aid and don't put in measures or don't wait to put in measures to help those, like what happened with Speaker Voss rejecting $25 million because he waited before putting in a plan that could have helped our unemployed. And we can't cut spending to programs, well, that have already kind of been affected, like food share and Wisconsin Works. We could be looking at cutting spending like at investments at Foxconn, or adding a wealth tax, a capital gains tax, and cutting spending to our prison system. Closing tax loopholes as well is another option. But bottom line, we need to be providing more opportunities for more people and help them prosper now more than ever if we're going to be recovering in our economy. Thank you.
Americans know a lot more than they did 2 months ago about how police treat some of those in their custody. The governor's recommended, I guess, a 9-bill package, bar chokeholds, bar no-knock warrants, minimum statewide training for police officers. Is that a package that you could support, or does it not do enough?
I support the package. I believe it's practical, and then I believe it can lead to further steps to really fundamentally reevaluate what the police role is in our communities. We absolutely need to work towards removing qualified immunity statewide, ending the school to prison pipeline, and think about using incarceration minimally and focus more on rehabilitation and punishment over profits. And then there needs to be a focus on accountability and transparency of the police. And that comes with implementing more control to communities. So implementing community control of police, implementing civilian-led transparent oversight committees, And then looking towards really making sure that those who are incarcerated right now for minor drug offenses, things like cannabis use, and those who are awaiting bail get released so that we don't have to be putting so much of our dollars into our prison system that is not working.
Your mention of cannabis, do you support legalizing both medical and recreational marijuana?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I believe you brought up that we need revenue sources, and we're going to continue to need revenue sources in the wake of the pandemic. And I believe that legalizing cannabis, both medicinal use and recreational use, is going to be a key way to bring in more revenue, but we need to make sure that we're doing it by releasing folks who are incarcerated for using cannabis, and that any sort of economic development that happens with legalizing marijuana centers equity, centers business opportunities, and make sure those business opportunities are going to Black people.
This is a new subject, excuse me. The Constitution says the party in power in the Capitol shall draw the next congressional and legislative district lines. The governor has proposed a People's Commission, which would draw the lines and then forward it to lawmakers to enact. You support the governor's proposal?
Absolutely. The legislature should have no say in drawing maps. We need transparent, independent, fair maps drawn by a nonpartisan committee. People should choose their representatives, and all people need to have better and fair access to the ballot box. And this is regardless of their race, their class, their immigration, or incarceration status.
Thank you. 2 questions on property taxes. As you know, school districts and local governments are limited in what they can levy in property taxes. They face caps and revenue limits. If you pass a referendum, you can get around those limits. If you're a member of the Assembly, would you vote to continue to keep those property tax caps in place or do away with them?
You know, I think those caps really harm the quality of life for our cities and our towns and make it much harder to produce public resources that we need to put towards communities right now. I think cities need much more flexibility in spending so that they can put it towards valuable resources like public education. And then we really need to look at alternative revenue sources that can come from stopping tax breaks for the wealthy and well-connected.
So local governments should have more authority to raise revenues from different sources of revenue. Should local governments have the ability to enact a half-cent sales tax, which now only counties can do?
So sales tax being a regressive tax, as is property tax, I think, unfortunately, raising that and expanding that will disproportionately affect people of color. And you'll see a rise in racial income disparities. So again, I think we need to tax based on ability to pay and use that revenue to help fund our cities.
We've not been able to find a stable source of revenue for our highways for years. The gas tax, 30.9 cents per gallon, hasn't been raised in 10 years. Are you willing to consider an increase in the gas tax to provide a stable source of revenue for highways, Francesca?
Yes.
How many pennies do you think?
You know, I would have to take into account what how often people are driving right now. I think it's going to be decreasing with the current pandemic, and so it's going to depend. The scale is going to depend.
Okay, I'm really intrigued as you said, a mom and pop restaurant owner. Mm-hmm. Do you think state and federal governments have properly acted in terms of vis-a-vis small businesses like you to protect public safety, or have they gone a little too far or not far enough?
Not far enough.
Not far enough?
I think the response was timid. I think the current administration did everything that they could to try to implement more swift action and prioritize public safety, but they were met with challenges from the GOP leaders and Speaker Voss. And what's that done is that's prolonged this pandemic, and what that does is really hurt small businesses like mine.
Understand. The pandemic has not only caused a drop in state revenues, but it puts more pressure on healthcare systems that the state government relies on. You mentioned expanding Medicaid. If you're a state assembly member voting on the next state budget, should hospitals get a bigger priority than they may have in the current state budget?
Again, I think we need to be looking at prioritizing people and their health and not just look at institutions. So can we be proactive and really expand Medicare and then expand Medicare up to 200% of the federal poverty level, and then start looking at investing in more of the care economy, investing in more nursing programs and training nurses, investing in mental health initiatives, which is going to be a huge conversation during the pandemic and afterwards. Can we invest in peer support and create jobs by training more peer support leaders and mental health professionals? And then look at mobile healthcare units. We need to make sure that we are reaching as many people as we can, as they are now stuck in their homes or unable to access healthcare, whether that be health insurance or actual care. So mobile healthcare units and investing in that, I think, could be a really great strategy and creative solution to make sure that we are putting the care of communities first.
Should businesses that have followed all the health and safety COVID rules and regulations, whether from WEDC or the CDC, should they be immune from frivolous lawsuits?
So about lawsuits, I always think that businesses need to prioritize protecting their workers, and businesses that prioritize protecting their workers should be rewarded with tax credits and incentives. Where I see lawsuits needing to happen, I think what's going on is, where's the lawsuit towards the GOP leadership for endangering Wisconsinites when they had no plan or response to this crisis and did not pass a bill for over 80 days and instead brought their own frivolous lawsuit towards the Evers administration? I think we need to look at being more prepared, putting in statewide lockdowns where it is needed. Now that we have the data where the cases are, where the outbreaks are, now that we have more resources coming from different parts of the country, there needs to be swift statewide orders so that we can collectively combat this crisis and start actually focusing on the economy instead of the other way around.
New subject. When a local government authorizes a major public works projects, should the bidding standards and requirements give preferences to Wisconsin companies? The reason I ask is that a study found in 2015 out-of-state contractors were awarded $72 million in contracts for these local government public works projects, but that $72 million doubled to $146 million in 2018. Should Wisconsin businesses get preferences?
Wisconsin businesses that offer proper protections for their workers and look out for the livelihoods of their workers should absolutely be given preferences. And I believe that Wisconsin work should prioritize Wisconsin labor.
Okay, now from looking at your campaign materials on social media, you've identified a lot of issues. Is there any issue that is key to your campaign that we haven't touched on in this session that you want to bring up now, Francesca?
I really just want to focus on collectively caring for community, and that comes with having a higher minimum wage so that people have purchasing power and more control of their income, providing housing, which is a basic human right, so affordable housing is a top priority, as well as looking at expanding healthcare, because the health of our individuals really is going to be the way that we start recuperating in this economy.
And then final question, do you want, it's an open seat with a lot of people running, do you want to highlight any differences between you and your opponents in the August 11 primary? Why are you the most qualified, please?
But I'm not okay with what's going on right now. And we as a state cannot be okay with what is going on. And change happens when you bring in an outsider. I happen to be an outsider. I haven't followed this trajectory and the rule book for how folks are elected and go into working in the Capitol. I don't have millions of dollars worth of property. I don't have a law degree. But that shouldn't matter. We should have more people like me, a mom, a community activist, a small business owner, and a service industry worker with lots of restaurant experience who has a massive stake in their community and is invested in their community. Look, I am living in fear right now, like so many of us. And I intend to use that fear to find opportunities of hope and change that we can bring to that Capitol.
Thank you. Francesca Hong of Madison is a Democratic candidate in the 76th Assembly District. The primary is August 11. Francesca, thanks for talking to WisconsinEye. I hear your biggest fan barking in the background. What's your biggest fan's name?
That is Penny. She is not thrilled that I kept her in the basement. Unfortunately, it's too warm for her to be outside right now. She's a Shiba Inu mix, so she's got way more fur than she really needs.
I understand.
Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.